Let's take a look at a program specification, and we're going to build it using non-object oriented techniques, and then we're going to translate it into object oriented techniques. So let's start off and say that we're going to just build a restaurant menu. And so all I want this program to do is give me the ability to keep track of some items on a menu and then print out that menu. That's all I want. As for the specifications, let's build that in here right now. Okay, so pretty simple stuff here. Typical menu will have items on it, and the items will have a name, a description, a price, and in our case, we'll say maybe there'll be a little indication if that's a gluten-free menu item. So we have to think about, well, how would we store that kind of information? So in a very simple non-object oriented way of doing things, we would imagine that in order to store this data, I'm going to need to have a few pieces of information. I'm going to need to have a few variables to store this. And so if we think about names might be things like hot and spicy chicken wings, or it might be ribs and beans, or it might be bangers and mash, or whatever, and then there'd be a description of the actual food. So if we think about what that kind of information is, that's all text. So we're going to be building a string array to hold the actual names of the menu items, and that's going to be a new string array, and there's 5 items. We've already determined from up here that there's 5 items. So let's create that new array. Now the same thing's going to go for the descriptions. Now what you should be recognizing here is that we're building several arrays that are all going to work together. So we call these parallel arrays, or sometimes associated arrays. So the idea is that each array will hold a certain type of information, and the same element in each array will be associated with one element. So I'll give you an example of that in 1 second once I'm finished building out the data here. So next is going to be a price. Well, for price, we're going to need some decimals, so we'll call this a double array, and we'll call it menu item prices, and that's a new double array with 5 elements. And last but not least, an indication if it's gluten-free. So what kind of information would we imagine is gluten-free? Well, an item is either gluten-free or it's not. So it's either yes, it's gluten-free, or no, it's not gluten-free, or true or false. So true or false is a Boolean kind of information. So we'll call that menu item gluten-free is a new Boolean array with 5 items in it. Okay, so here we go. We've got our information here, and now the next thing I might want to do is actually set up some of that information. So in my case, let's start. In my case, I really like chicken wings. So let's say we're going to say menu item names 0. So the very first item in the menu, we'll call it, let's say, salt and pepper chicken wings. So there's the menu item name. The description. Now obviously if you're following along here, and this should be a plural, if you're following along here, feel free to add in whatever items you want, right? You don't have to do these. Menu item, put in your favorite foods. Now, I'll just say that these chicken wings are gluten-free. I don't know if that's actually true or not, because I don't really care about gluten. Okay, so here's one item. So what this tells me is that the index number here, this 0, means that we're referring to the first element in every single array. And you can see that the first element in every single array is talking about this idea, this concept of the chicken wings. Now if I repeated this, all the way through for 4 more items. So I just copy and paste that. I would change just the information for each of these pieces of data for this particular menu item. So if my next one is a grilled cheese sandwich, I would just change this up here. Okay, so all you need to do now is go in and go ahead and fill in your other menu items. Okay there, so now I've got my data. So in the first step, I declare my necessary variables to hold the data. And in my second step, I'm actually going to assign the data or initialize it to something, to a value. And then the last step down here, now I need to actually print out the menu. Now, since I'm using arrays, the nice thing is that I can simply loop through from the number 0 up to the number 4 and print out some kind of combination of these data, of these variables, using this this index. So we'll start from 0, and I want to go up to 4. So I could say less than or equal to 4. I could say less than 5. But the best thing to do when you're dealing with arrays, especially because arrays can change size later on depending on the way your program's written, you should actually use one of the array names and use the length property. So this is actually going to resolve to 5. So this is like I less than 5. So it's going to go from 0 to 4, and then when it hits 5, it's going to jump out of this loop. And what we'll do is we'll print out some kind of combination of the data that makes sense, using I as the index. So that should print out the name, the description, and the price. If this were on an actual menu, the formatting would probably look a little bit different. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use the gluten-free indicator and just print whether that's gluten-free underneath it, but we could certainly combine it all. So since it's a Boolean, I can just test. That will give me back a true or false value, just referring to the variable there. Because if it's true, this will be true. If it's false, it's false. So if it's true, I want to print out gluten-free. If it's not gluten-free, I'm not going to print anything else out. Now to keep all this on one line, I'm going to change this from a print line to a straight out print, just like that. And what I'll do is, if this is going to print out gluten-free, so if this is going to be gluten-free, I'll have it print out gluten-free in brackets at the end of the actual item. If it's not, I'll just have it print out a blank line. So this will essentially move the cursor down, our print cursor down to the next line. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Alright, so if I zoom in here, you can see there's my item number 1. So there's our description, or pardon me, there's our name, salt and pepper chicken wings, our description, our price follows, and we say gluten-free only after the items that are in fact gluten-free. Okay, so this is just an example. Now I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We should space something out there for the prices. For example, we might want to actually print out a good old $sign before we print out the prices. So in the next video, we'll take a look at how to convert this into an object-oriented program.